What's going on, everyone? A&J here, and welcome to the network. And in this video, I am gonna go over the news that broke over the last few hours, and that is the departure of now former Los Angeles Clippers head coach Doc Rivers. And if we're being perfectly honest here, this move really isn't all that surprising at all, given the fact that over the time period that Doc Rivers has been the head coach of the Clippers, there really hasn't been a great deal of success, at least not going beyond the second round of the playoffs. And it's maybe even less surprising just for the fact that they not only were favored to face the Lakers in the conference finals, but instead wound up blowing a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets, who eventually faced the Lakers and, of course, have been eliminated since then. But given that they've brought in the likes of a Paul George and a Kawhi Leonard, who were expected to be the main driving forces in changing the fortunes in Clipperland, it just didn't really work out the way that a lot of people were hoping for. And it's really interesting that this has been the case. I mean, you go back a number of years where they had Blake Griffin and Chris Paul, and yet somehow, some way, the combination of those two just didn't seem to be enough, along with the DeAndre Jordan and others. And to me, it's also alarming given the fact that you've got a former champion head coach in Doc Rivers with the Boston Celtics. I mean, granted, he had Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Kevin Garnett all in their prime, but they got there twice within 3 years. Both times against the Lakers, won one of them. And you would think that would actually be enough to get the Clippers over the hump, but again, somehow it just didn't work out that way. Regardless, it's just a matter of what's next now. Starting for the Clippers, it's really going to be interesting to see who they go after. I mean, you've got two very solid candidates, one in Tyronn Lue, who was seemingly the favorite to get the Brooklyn Nets job, yet and still somehow that wound up going to Steve Nash, which surprised a lot of people, myself included. I didn't even think that Steve Nash was even in the running for that job or was even interested. I mean, last time I checked, he wasn't into coaching, but as I understand it, and it's been revealed, he has a relationship with Kevin Durant, and that was what was the influencing factor to get Nash as the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. And with that, it's again a little surprising that that's the way that they went, but he made an awful lot of sense for that job. And if nothing else, makes sense for a variety of other openings, including the aforementioned Clippers. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him take over as head coach. I mean, he himself also has had a championship run with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the other option that they have available to them, also having worked under Doc Rivers, is Sam Cassell, who, interestingly enough, during a game in the bubble, actually took over coaching duties for Doc Rivers, and it seemed to have gone pretty well. I mean, it was very limited action, and you don't have a whole lot to work with, but maybe that helps, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? We'll find out in the coming days. But with that, you also wonder what's next for Doc Rivers. There's reports that the Philadelphia 76ers would be a very interesting landing spot. He would definitely be really good for Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. I think, if nothing else, there's a much greater window and what's the term that I'm looking for? A much higher ceiling when it comes to those two, as well as the rest of the core of the 76ers. So maybe he gets that, maybe he doesn't. If not that, there's also the Houston Rockets, where you've got Russell Westbrook and James Harden. And to me, as a former NBA guard himself, I think that he would be able to relate pretty well with Harden and Westbrook, and maybe he's going to be the difference that they needed. I would certainly look forward to the changes that he brings along for either of those rosters, but really, I'm more interested in what you guys think. Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoy the content, like and share, and if you're new, subscribe. Thank you for being here, and thanks for having me.